They're the ones who will tackle the really big problems that slow, messy democracy can't handle.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into a significant and maybe slightly concerning shift in thinking. We're looking at the radicalization of the tech elite. You know, the people once seen as building this bright, shiny future.
It's a really critical topic if you're tracking power today. For years, the story around Silicon Valley was, well, progress, innovation, right? Technology as this neutral force for good.
Right. Apolitical almost.
Exactly. But the sources we're drawing on today, especially Silverman's work, based on some really sharp reporting and interviews, they map out a pretty systematic ideological change.
Okay, so let's set the stage for everyone listening. Our goal here is to try and figure out how this happened. How did these tech leaders, the ones who talked about utopian futures, end up taking positions that seem, frankly, hostile to democracy, regulation, even basic liberal ideas?
And it's crucial, I think, to see it as an ecosystem. That's what the analysis stresses. Yes, you have big names like Elon Musk right at the center, very visible.
Impossible to miss him.
Right. But it goes deeper into venture capital, private finance, political action committees, think tanks, and it expresses itself through this specific kind of language, battling things like the, quote, woke mind virus.
That's a key distinction then, isn't it? It's not just about one person's tweets. It's systemic. It affects how money moves, how power operates globally, something you really need to grasp.
And what's really interesting, or maybe disturbing, depending on your view, is the argument that this shift, this move towards, right-wing, anti-woke, anti-regulation positions, it wasn't actually a sudden break.
Oh.
No, the sources frame it more as a crystallization. Like, these tendencies were already there, latent within the tech mindset from the beginning.
Latent tendencies. Okay,
Yeah.
That needs unpacking. Can you give us a bit of context? What beliefs were sort of baked in that made this shift possible?
Sure. I mean, tech culture always had this strong libertarian streak, right?
Yeah.
A core belief among many founders that, well, engineers know best, that they can design better systems for society than messy democracy or politicians ever could.
Kind of technocratic arrogance, maybe?
You could call it that. Combine that with the move fast and break things mantra, which started with software but got applied to, well, everything else, including social rules. You get a pretty potent mix. This radicalization, the argument goes, is just giving a political voice to that long-standing anti-institutional bias.
So the core argument isn't that they fundamentally changed, but that they found a political movement, an ideology that really fit with their existing belief and their own kind of superiority.
Yeah.
And their desire to be free from oversight.
That nails it. And that's why Musk, even though he's the loudest and maybe most influential figure right now, is presented as emblematic rather than some kind of exception. He's reflecting something bigger happening among the elite who fund him and who he, in turn, supports.
Okay, so if we accept this ideology is really solidified, what are the stakes? What does this concentration of power actually mean in the real world?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? Tech influence isn't neutral anymore, if it ever truly was. These people, these companies, they control vital infrastructure communication, AI development, finance, and they have unbelievable amounts of concentrated wealth.
Yeah.
So if this elite aligns its vast resources and this particular ideology with, let's say, illiberal forces that push against democratic checks and balances, it fundamentally shifts the power balance in society, away from ordinary citizens toward a kind of techno-oligarchy.
Okay, that's the ideology and the stakes. Let's get into the mechanics.
Yeah.
How does this actually translate into action? You mentioned the engine of influence, money and strategy. How is all that wealth used?
Right, the money isn't just sitting there, it's used very strategically. Three main ways, really.
Yeah.
First, to amplify the narratives we just talked about, funding media outlets, think tanks, influencers to push the anti-woke, anti-regulation message constantly, globally.
Okay, amplifying the message. What's second?
Second is directly influencing policy and politicians. Huge amounts flowing into political action committees, lobbying efforts, targeting defense contracts, areas where government partnership is needed or lucrative.
And the third piece, which the sources really highlight, is this idea of regulatory capture. That sounds important.
It's maybe the end game, regulatory capture. It's basically when the industry that's supposed to be regulated ends up heavily influencing or even controlling the agency that's meant to regulate it.
Like the fox guarding the henhouse.
Exactly like that. If you can influence who gets appointed as a regulator or fund the studies that shape policy debates, you can essentially write the rules in your own favor, not necessarily the public's.
We should probably bring in the financial context here, too. The sources link this power play to the era after zero interest rates.
Yeah.
Why is that period so important?
It's fundamental because the sheer speed and volume of wealth creation during that period when money was basically free, it just supercharged everything.
Right.
These tech leaders saw their wealth explode almost overnight. This easy money environment allowed them to approach politics and policy influence almost like another market to disrupt. They could pour money into it at a scale that democratic institutions simply weren't prepared for.
And it's not just happening in Silicon Valley anymore, is it? The geography has shifted. The sources track this movement to places like Austin, Miami, DC, even globally.
Absolutely. And that geographical shift isn't accidental. Moving headquarters or major operations to Texas or Florida, it's partly taxes, sure, but it's also a political statement.
Seeking friendlier territory.
Friendlier territory, less regulation, easier access to conservative political networks. It shows how comprehensive this influence network is: finance, lobbying, culture, geography, all interconnected globally.
Okay, so if money's the engine, what's the fuel? You mentioned this cultural framework, this narrative of grievance. That seems central.
It really is. These techno-social narratives, as the sources call them, they run on grievance and resentment. It's aimed at what they see as the old elites, universities, legacy media, government bureaucracy, the deep state.
Coupled with a disdain for liberal norms.
Yes, and this constant talk about authenticity, often while pushing very calculated narratives.
Well, wait, here's the paradox, isn't it? How can billionaires, people with immense global power, genuinely position themselves as victims of the elite? It feels counterintuitive.
But that's the political genius of it in a way. The grievance narrative legitimizes their actions for a wider audience. By claiming they're victims of biased media, unfair taxes, stifling regulation, the woke mind virus, they frame themselves as fighting against the establishment.
So they become relatable.
In a sense, yes. They tap into the real frustrations many ordinary people feel about institutions, making them seem like fellow fighters. Despite your immense wealth and power, it's a very effective strategy.
And this narrative connects to what the book calls risky frontiers. This focus on existential threats like AI or living forever.
Exactly. These aren't just side interests. Focusing on these huge existential risks, AI, safety, colonizing Mars, life extension, it serves a purpose. It positions these tech figures not just as businessmen, but as, well, saviors, prophets, almost.
The only ones smart enough or bold enough to save humanity.
Precisely. They're the ones who will tackle the really big problems that slow, messy democracy can't handle. It justifies their demand for less oversight, for more power. They're dealing with planetary stakes, you see.
So they become the heroes of their own story, justifying why they shouldn't be bound by normal rules.
That's the narrative. And the real danger, the sources warn, is when this messianic ambition, this desire to fix humanity with technology, merges with a political ideology that actively rejects democratic accountability and norms. That's a volatile combination.
Okay, before we wrap up with the final thought, let's do some critical analysis. If someone listening wants to read the source material, what are its main strengths?
Well, the reporting is definitely a major strength. Lots of interviews, good observation of a world that's usually pretty closed off. And it brings conceptual clarity. It connects the dots between lots of seemingly separate incidents, tweets, deals, into a coherent story of transformation. It helps you see the pattern, not just the noise.
But it can't be the whole picture, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned how opaque this world is. What are the caveats, the limitations we should be aware of?
That opacity is key. Because access is so limited, some conclusions have to rely on inference, on connecting patterns, rather than having, definitive proof for every single claim. So interpretation plays a role.
And the perspective matters too.
Definitely. The analysis comes from a critical standpoint. Someone who's more aligned with tech libertarianism or who admires these figures would likely read their motivations very differently. That's important context to hold.
Is there also a risk of painting everyone with the same brush, lumping the entire tech elite together?
Yes, that's a fair point. There's always a risk of oversimplification. Treating them as monolithic might miss important internal disagreements, fractures, or contradictions within that group. Understanding those nuances could be important too.
Okay, last point on the analysis. The book isn't just describing something, it feels like a warning. If this movement is so powerful and well-funded, where does any counterbalance come from? Is there resistance?
The book does gesture towards that. It suggests that levers still exist in civil society, public pressure, activism, through effective regulation if governments have the will to implement it, and crucially, through independent journalism that keeps digging and exposing how these networks operate. The shift is powerful, but maybe not unstoppable.
All right, let's summarize the key takeaways for you listening. First, understand there's this powerful, interconnected network, tech leaders, finance, political operators actively working to reshape the political landscape based on a specific ideology. Second, remember this radicalization has roots in tech's long-standing anti-institutional bias. Musk is a prominent example, but he reflects a broader trend.
Right. Emblematic, not exceptional.
And finally, grasp the volatile mix here. Immense wealth, amplified by easy money, fueling a specific political ideology that often positions itself as humanity's savior while resisting oversight.
And that really brings us to the final thought to leave you with. The analysis highlights the huge stakes when technological ambition, especially on a planetary scale, isn't checked by democratic norms or accountability. So the question becomes, if concentrated wealth gets to write the narratives about saving the world and simultaneously rejects the mechanisms meant to oversee it, what checks and balances can actually remain effective? Where does that leave the rest of us in shaping our collective future?
A very sobering but necessary question to ponder. Thanks for exploring this complex topic with us today.
My pleasure. It's certainly a lot to think about.
Grab Gilded Rage by Jacob Silverman now on sale, $22.95. Don't miss this chance and build good habits and achieve remarkable results. Buy now, today.
Like and subscribe for more Bookhaven podcasts.